A wonderful welcome to everybody. My name is Paul Mushonga, and I'm the Master Lecturer for this module, Office Administration 511. I hope and trust that we'll have a fruitful time in this module as it seeks to build you, transform you, equip you, and empower you into becoming a world-class administrator. We have got very rich material that if you utilize it, it will be very useful and effective in this transformation journey. Module aims and outline. The module aims and outline of this module are that it seeks to make you understand the administrative function within the organization. It is very important that you engage effectively with the material in order for you to have a complete understanding of the administrative function. This is a very balanced module which you will find enjoying, interactive, as it seeks to equip you and make you understand the overall picture of the administrative function. It is very important that you engage and participate in interactive learning. Participative learning is very important as it makes you to be able to read widely. It is also important to note that this module is very interesting, and believe me you that you will enjoy this module. It has got very rich practical topics which include communication, leadership, decision making, and office layout, among others. It is also important to understand that this is an NQF level 5 module. So whatever you do in this module, your research, your assignments, and any assessment that you do in this module must be up to the required standard of the NQF level 5. You may be wondering, how do I effectively study for this module? What you need to do in order for you to get high grades for this module, you need to master your study prescribed material. This material not only encompasses your prescribed textbook, but also your recommended material and any extra research that you may also do. It is very important that at this level of study, you must read and study widely. It is advisable that you use journal articles. Journal articles are an important source of information as they contain updated information. It is also important that you interact and participate with your fellow classmates. Remember that at this level of study, we are not looking for you to reproduce or memorize information. We are more concerned about your ability to apply what you have studied. So it is very important that you read widely. That is the key secret in terms of the method of study that will make you to be able to excel in this module. Remember, I talked about the need to get high grades when I looked at the method of study. So in order to comprehend the method of study, it is important that you use your prescribed and recommended material. The prescribed material for this study is a textbook by Ferreira E.J. and Greenwald 2021, which is the 5th edition. It is also important that in terms of your extra reading, you must use your recommended material. But also, remember that we are in the digital age. And in the digital age, it's about making effective use of electronic sources. So the electronic sources that you may use in this module encompass Springer, Emerald, Science Direct, ebooks, and ResearchGate. There are also rich materials that are placed on your Moodle platform. It is very, very important that you make effective use of your Moodle platform to get extra material that are important and that will build your assignment and also that will assist you in terms of getting high grades in your assessments. In order for you to be certified, to have met the requirements of this module, you need to have met each and every learning outcome of this module. There are 6 key learning outcomes that are illustrated for this particular module. The first outcome requires you to be able to understand the administrative function within the organization. It is also important for you to understand the importance of communication, as communication is a key cornerstone or aspect of this module. One cannot become a world-class administrator without embracing the notion of leadership, which is learning outcome number three. The modern world or the modern organizational environment cannot function effectively without understanding the role of teamwork. It is therefore important that in terms of your learning outcome number four, you appreciate the importance of teamwork in the modern organization. Decision making is so critical and also so fundamental. Therefore, in learning outcome number five, you need to appreciate and understand the role played by decision making in the modern day organization. Any organization that seeks to become world class must operate in premises that are of a world class nature. Learning outcome number six therefore focuses on office layout. It is very important that you master each and every learning outcome of this module. You may be wondering how this module is assessed. Well, let me relax you as I take you through the whole sequencing process of how the module is assessed. The module consists of coursework, which is compulsory and has got a weighting of 40%. At the end of the semester, you will write a final semester examination, which has got a weighting of 60%. Let me come back to the 40% for coursework. What does it constitute? It constitutes compulsory CA Test 1 and compulsory CA Test 2, each having a weighting of 15%. So the two tests combined, they've got a total weighting of 30%. And the assignment that you will submit, which is also compulsory, is got a weighting of 10%, giving us a total of 40%. It is therefore important that you begin working hard from the beginning. Let me give you a practical illustration. A student, for example, may pass the final semester examination, but when combined with coursework, because the student did not work hard in the coursework was not so good, it was poor. When combined with the examination which the student has passed, the student end up overall failing the module. Another student may also fail the final semester examination. But because the student worked so hard during the course of the semester and has good marks for coursework, that student can easily navigate and move to an overall passing position. It is therefore very important that you begin working hard from the beginning of the semester. Your coursework is very important and your final examination is also very important. Let me officially introduce to you topic one, communication in an organization. I'm excited to introduce this topic to you, and you may be wondering why I am excited. It is because at the end of this topic, you and I should have improved in terms of our communication competence and also in terms of our communication skills. What therefore are the learning outcomes of this topic? You need to be able to define the concept of communication and be able to present in a diagrammatic illustration the communication process. This is your learning outcome number one. Learning outcome number two, you must be able to clearly distinguish the concept of verbal and non-verbal communication. The importance of effective communication skills for the modern organization must not be underestimated. And this is learning outcome number three. The importance of graphic communication for the modern organization must be clearly explained and understood. This is learning outcome number four. The embracement of the electronic mediums in terms of enhancing effective communication in the modern organization must also be clearly explained. This is learning outcome number five. You must embrace all these learning outcomes. They are all important for your clear understanding of this topic. Let us look at the definition of communication. The concept of communication can be defined differently by different authors. But amongst all the definitions of communication that you may come across, there are always common words that are common in every definition. For example, in this module, we have narrowed down our definition of communication to only two scholars. The first definition by Opang and Birikoran, who in 2014 and on page 208, they defined communication as a process of transmitting information and common understanding from one person to another. There are three critical aspects that are contained in this definition that you need to give attention to. One is the notion of process. The other is the notion of transmission of information. The third aspect is the notion of from one person to another person. All these aspects are also contained in the definition by Ferreira and Greenwald 2021 on page 95, who defined communication as a process of transmitting information, knowledge, and ideas from one person to another. We also see the three things that are contained in the definition by Opang and Birikoran also present in the definition by Ferreira and Greenwald: the notion of process, transmission of information, and from one person to another person. But also, we need to bring into the picture the notion of feedback, because communication cannot take place without the provision of feedback. So, in simple terms, communication can be defined as a process of transmitting information, knowledge, and ideas from one person to another with the provision of feedback. Let me recap. We have agreed that communication can be defined as a process of the transmission of information, knowledge, and ideas from one person to another person with the provision of feedback. It is therefore critical that if communication is a process, everyone has the capacity, everyone has the capability to learn to become an effective and excellent communicator. This is why I'm excited, because we all have the ability and the capacity to learn and improve in terms of our communication competence, in terms of our communication knowledge, and in terms of our communication skills. Your career path is tailored towards becoming a world-class administrator. There is therefore a demand that you, in your journey to become a world-class administrator, you need to refine, you need to develop your communication skills. If communication was an event, it was going to be so difficult for anybody to improve in terms of their communication skills, in terms of their communication competence. There is therefore a responsibility that has been placed upon yourself in your journey to becoming a world-class administrator. Each and every day, therefore, there is a requirement that has been placed upon you to develop your communication skills. You can do it. It is not impossible. It is very much possible. All you need is to develop an attitude of learning so that you refine your communication skills and competence on a daily basis. We have agreed that communication is a process, and therefore it is important that each and every student must be able to draw this diagram of the communication process, and not only draw it, but also be able to label it nicely and clearly, and also explain what is taking place. Let me now go and illustrate what is taking place in this diagram. We agreed that communication is a process, and in this process, there are different role players. Which are the role players? The key role players are the sender and the receiver. So the sender has got a particular responsibility, and equally also the receiver has got particular responsibilities. What are the responsibilities of the sender? The sender has got an obligation or a duty to create and encode the message, make sense of it, and relay or send the message to the receiver. But the sender must also select the medium or the channel in which the message must travel before it reaches the receiver. So there are different channels of communication which the sender can use. Some of these channels include television, it can include radio, it can include WhatsApp, it can include Facebook, it can include Twitter, it can include Instagram. So all these are different mediums or channels which the sender can use to relay or send the message to the receiver. Once the receiver receives the message, the receiver has got an obligation or a duty to decode the message and make sense of the message. If the receiver has clearly understood the message, there is an obligation on the receiver to send feedback to the sender. That is why communication becomes a continuous process. But let us also look at the things that may also hinder effective communication from taking place. When the sender sends a message, there may be environmental barriers such as noise that can hamper the effective delivery of the message to the receiver, such that when the receiver receives the message, it may be distorted. It is not the true message. But there are also personal barriers which may include the use of technical language, which we call jargon. So it is encouraged that the sender must keep it simple and direct and send the message in simple terms. Otherwise, the use of jargon may make that the receiver may not be able to clearly understand the message that has been conveyed or sent by the sender. So it is very, very important that you abide by the key principles of communication. Keeping it simple is the best way, as the receiver will easily understand the message and will therefore provide feedback, and the process of communication becomes a continuous process. Let us unpack the difference between verbal and non-verbal communication. In simple terms, verbal communication is the communication through the use of words. This can be done through oral communication or through written communication. Non-verbal communication, on the other hand, is communication without the use of words. In other words, it is wordless communication. This can be achieved through the use of body language, signals, gestures, eye contact, facial expressions, and handshakes. The use of non-verbal communication is so significant, such that some communication scholars have gone to the extent of elaborating that 90% of all communication takes place non-verbally. But as a world-class administrator, it is important that you are balanced in terms of both verbal and non-verbal communication. Let me give a practical example of non-verbal communication. Imagine a traffic police officer standing in the middle of the road where the traffic lights are not working and he or she is directing traffic. The drivers are just stopping, giving each other way by looking at the hand signals or the hand gestures that the traffic officer is using. The traffic officer is not saying any word. Non-verbal communication in practical usage. But let me also give an example of non-verbal communication within an organizational environment. One day you may arrive at the workplace and your teammates can ask you, why are you looking sad? Or why are you looking so excited? You have not shared them any sad news or any exciting news. Yet they have picked something from your body language. They may have looked at your facial expression. A picture without words can tell a story. It is therefore important that in order to build positive relationships in organizations, we must understand nonverbal communication. Nonverbal communication is very important in order for the enhancement of our relationships within the organization and also within teams. The Minister of Finance may present a budget. In order to simplify the information that is presented in his budget speech, graphics may be used. For example, income versus expenditure. The governor of the Reserve Bank may present a monetary policy, and in order to simplify what he has presented in his monetary policy, graphics may be used. A bar graph, pie charts, frequency polygons may be used to simplify the information that he has presented. This is the importance of graphical communication. So graphical communication, which involves the usage of visual materials, drawings, photographs, slides, transparent, and sketches, is important in order to bring simplicity to information that is complex, that has been presented. But in order for it to be understood by the layman or by those that may not necessarily understand complex information, it is presented in a simplified manner. So graphical communication is very, very important. And for the modern day organizations, it helps to collapse a lot of information into easy, understandable information. Remember, I said graphic communication is important as it helps to simplify complex information into information that can easily be understood by everybody. That is one aspect or one function of graphic communication. The other function of graphic communication is enhanced through graphic design. Let us give a practical example. For example, if one goes window shopping and he has no intention of buying any product, that person may end up actually buying a particular product because of the influence of the graphic that is designed in that particular shop. So graphic communication through graphic design can influence consumer buyer behavior. For example, also, if you open a newspaper, be it the Sunday Times, be it the Sowetan, be it the Daily Sun, whatever newspaper you may open, you may find that there may be a cartoon without words. And that cartoon is telling or depicting a story that has happened within the community. Another practical example of the importance of graphic communication, not only in organizations but also in society in general. If you visit the Union Building, you will see a sculpture of our late former president Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela. That sculpture tells a story. It tells us about the journey that he undertook, the imprisonment, and on his way to becoming the first democratically elected president of this nation. So graphics are important, and therefore it is important that we understand the importance of graphic communication within the modern day organization. When the internet goes down, most organizations will cease to function in terms of their communication systems. This illustrates for you the vital importance of electronic communication. Most of the communication that is taking place in the modern day organization is through electronic means. Imagine the use of the electronic mail, commonly known as the email. Imagine also the communication that is taking place between and amongst organizational members and outside the organization. Think of Facebook, think of LinkedIn, think of YouTube, think of Instagram, and also think of Twitter. It is therefore important that the modern organization can only function effectively through the embracement of electronic communication. It is now normal that most of the communication that is taking place in organizations is through the electronic mail. Organizational members must therefore have the discipline to effectively and efficiently use the electronic mail. That is why I began by saying if the internet goes down, communication ceases in most organizations. Gone are the days of sticking to traditional ways of communication. Electronic communication has revolutionized and it has changed the way in which organizational members communicate with each other. It is therefore important also for you to embrace the changes that have taken place in terms of electronic communication. In the past, most organizations made use of fax machines, but the development in technology has meant that there is now less use of fax machines. Most organizations have migrated to make use of the electronic mail. The email is now widely mostly used in the modern organization as a form of electronic communication. So it is important to illustrate and note that most organizational members are interconnected through the email. But also, it must be noted that the use of instant messaging is equally important. Usage of WhatsApp, Instagram, Telegram, and all these other electronic platforms that can make you to be able to communicate in real time and get a real response are also widely used in the modern organization. Why is this important? This is important because distance is no longer a barrier to effective communication. One can easily communicate with a person in the United States of America instantaneously. This is the importance of instant messaging. So, the way that we communicate in organizations and in society has been radically shifted, it has been radically changed through the use of electronic communication. There is no organization that is an island. Organizations communicate and interact with people who are outside the organization. The question may be, how do these people interact and communicate with the organization? They may do so in three principal ways. Number one, they may choose to visit the organization physically at its operating premises. Number two, they may choose to telephone the organization. Or number three, they may choose to send an email or even a letter to the organization. The key essence is that whatever method that they choose to interact with the organization, they must be treated with dignity and respect. Remember that in your journey to become a world class administrator, you need to interact and positively relate to people. This means that you have got an obligation to treat people with dignity and with respect. Remember, I said one of the ways in which outsiders relate with the organization is by visiting its premises physically. It is therefore important to ensure a balance between visitors and the production process of the organization. Allowing visitors willy-nilly to visit the organizational premises may have a negative impact on productivity. It is therefore important that the organization comes up and implements a visitor management system. This will mean that visitors are educated, for example, on the importance of putting an appointment before visiting the organization. One of the other critical aspects is to ensure that all the organizational employees are well and adequately trained, such that they treat every visitor to the organization with dignity and respect. It is also important to illustrate that the importance of explaining the visitor's policy to the visitors remains critical also. The importance of ensuring that when visitors visit the organizational premises, they are required to check out. This is important in case something happens. So, if something happens, it becomes easier for anyone who is checking out or who is investigating anything to look at the records and determine what has transpired and who was within the premises and who was outside the premises. This means that security measures are also intensified, security measures are also increased, and it safeguards the operational environment of the organization. There are some people who may never be able to physically visit the organizational premises. Their only interaction with the organization is through a telephone call. It is therefore important to ensure that whoever telephones the organization must be treated with respect and dignity. Research has proven that organizations the world over are losing billions of dollars on a daily basis through mishandled telephone calls. There is therefore a responsibility upon you as a world class administrator to ensure that every incoming and every outgoing telephone call is handled professionally. How can this be achieved? Number one, you need to be enthusiastic. You need to show interest in the telephone call that you are handling. Number two, you need to put a smile. A smile makes you to be able to relax. As you are relaxed, you are able to articulate yourself confidently. As you articulate yourself confidently, a clear tone of voice is put in motion. This is important because the other person at the end of the telephone call will be able to understand you loud and clearly. As a recap, remember I said some outsiders can physically visit the organizational premises. Others can be able to telephone the organization. What about those who cannot be able to do this too? What can they do? They can be able to send either a letter or an email to the organization. Every letter or email that is sent to the organization must be responded to. It therefore means that there must be a time frame in which every email or letter that is received in the organization must get a response. This is important, and also a mechanism must be put in place in order to ensure that letters are delivered to the right people. If a letter is delivered to the wrong person, there is a high likelihood that that person may not respond to that letter, and it dents the image of the organization. So it is always important that the organization has got a clear policy in handling correspondence. Remember, the thumb rule is that every letter and every email that is received in the organization must get a response. Remember, you are a world class administrator, and a world class administrator is responsible and responds to every correspondence that is sent to the organization. In order to test your knowledge of having understood the learning outcomes of this topic, it is important to participate in this exercise. So every student is expected to go to YouTube and listen to the 7-minute video that is given there. So you need to follow the link that is there, and you watch the video and you respond to the questions that are asked in this slide. It is important that this exercise is discussed in class. This enhances participative learning. Remember, the journey to become a world-class administrator begins by an approach to be able to apply the knowledge that we have gained in this topic. So every student is expected to participate effectively in this exercise. I hope that you will enjoy it and you will participate effectively. Remember earlier on, I talked and gave an illustration that organizations are losing billions of dollars through poor communication. This case study supports that assertion or supports that illustration. It is very important that you read this case study and thereafter respond to the questions that are in the next slide. I hope that you will participate in this exercise also. Remember that what is key is the application of knowledge at this level of study. So by reading and practicing more case studies, it measures and gauges if you have understood the learning outcomes of this topic. That is very important because before you move to the next topic, you must have clearly understood each and every learning outcome of this topic. Remember, I said poor communication is very costly for the organization. So read the case study in the previous slide and then answer the questions that are illustrated in this slide. It is very important that every student participates in this exercise. The questions will be discussed in class and every student must be able to participate effectively. This will measure if you have achieved the learning outcomes of this topic. I thank you for your participation and I conclude this topic with a memorable quote from Albert Einstein. He says the following: I speak to everyone in the same way, whether it is the carpenter or the president of the university. This is important because in your journey as a world-class administrator, you need to relate to everyone with dignity and respect. That is the essence of greatness. I look forward to seeing you in topic 2, whereby we'll discuss interpersonal skills. Thank you so much for your participation. And I hope you have enjoyed this video. And I myself am looking forward to meeting you in topic number 2.